What is up, everybody? Welcome to Clear the Cash. We have a brand new audience with us today. For those of you that have been riding along with us for the past few months, you have been listening to this show on the Breakout Finder Network, but you are now hearing us on an entirely different platform. We are on the Rotounderworld Network. Matt Kelly has hit me up. He's a big fan of the podcast and what we're doing. He is also finally convinced that card investing is a viable means to make some income, and we're going to validate that statement for you along the way. Of course, you guys can find me on Twitter at an outraged Jew, and with me from the very beginning is Jesse Bak. You can find him on Twitter at planet_fatness. So just to kind of give people a background on how all this started, again, we've got a fairly large audience that was with us at Breakout Finder. We have a much greater audience now at Rotounderworld. Shout outs to all you great people. I think you're going to love the show that we put together. I got back into cards after being out of the card hobby for at least 20 years. I was in the hobby in the 90s, in the early 2000s, and then there was a big gap where I didn't buy any cards, didn't collect any cards, didn't spend $1 on cards. Totally regret it today. And I was lost. I found myself looking at cards again. It got hot. We're going to talk about some reasons why the market got hot. And Jesse happened to be a patron, and he said, hey, man, I just want to let you know I happen to have a little experience with cards if you're interested in chatting cards. And little did I know, this is like Tiger Woods, like going, hey, man, I'm okay at hitting a golf ball. So if like you ever want to talk like hitting golf balls, you know, just pitch something my way. And I come to find out that Jesse is like incredibly experienced. He's very, very active, which is what you want. Like the last thing you want is somebody preaching information to you that's not actively a part of what they're doing. They're not eating at their own restaurant, as Matt Kelly would say. And Jesse 100% eats at his own restaurant. He is incredibly versed in studying the values of cards. He's active in social media platforms, seeing the values of cards and the pulse on the market. So Jesse, kind of let people know a little bit about you. Let them know why you're the guy that they should be following, listening to, and why you are the reason that this show is honestly as successful as it is, because you're very much the anchor of it.
Nate, you got to be my hype man. Like everywhere I go, like if I'm at a job interview, you have to come with me. Okay, you got to fly over to Philly and come with me to job interviews because that intro was amazing. Yeah, so I've been my collecting story is probably not really unlike a lot of people that are just getting back into this right now and who collected as kids. So I started collecting back when I was 6 or 7 years old. With a bunch of my friends during recess. They would show off all their basketball cards and all their football cards that they bought with their parents. And that kind of got me into it. I talked to my brother about it. So he's an early 80s baby. I'm an early 90s baby. So there's quite a time gap between us in terms of what he liked to collect. And he was collecting a bunch when he was like 12, 13, 14 years old. And I'd kind of go through his collection and see what there was, if there was anything, really cool looking, if there was anything valuable. Like, when I was growing up, Shaq was still in his prime. And like when I was a really young kid, somebody like Kobe, I was still around to see, Michael Jordan come back from retirement twice and, return to the Wizards. So he was like an idol of mine. Being from Philadelphia, I was a big Iverson fan. So yeah, I was really into basketball cards and football cards, and so was my brother. So I started, bugging my parents every chance I could get to go to a Target or Value City. I don't know if you guys had that over in Washington or Oregon, but just to get cards on the weekends. And I was collecting through probably up until I was 13 or 14 years old. Just like everybody else, other interests pop up, whether it be, studying or whatever, or girls. And then I kind of, whenever we would go to the mall or something, I'd be like with my buddies or my girlfriend, and we'd go to the mall. And whenever there were card kiosks or like a local card show at a mall, I don't know what it was. I don't know if I just had that kind of collector gene in me, but I'd always be fascinated and kind of stop by and see what they had. And occasionally I'd pick up, just like a raw card for $10 or something, or $20, just to kind of have something. And I'm not spending too much money that way too. And but I really wasn't, taking the hobby seriously for quite some time until basically mid to late 2019. I started seeing, you know, prices were spiking. eBay, I would go on eBay occasionally just to order whatever, and I would even see eBay advertising for cards, and it seemed like they were kind of going crazy. And then as soon as Gary V popped his head out and made himself known that he's investing a lot of his own money into cards, that's when the hobby started blowing up, and it piqued my interest a little bit. But I still wasn't really buying. The work was really busy. I work at a hospital in Philadelphia, and I felt like I didn't have enough free time. And then COVID hit, and there's a lot more free time when you're at home. And I mean, so anyway, Gary V put out maybe a 3.5 or 4 hour video. It was a live stream on his YouTube channel back in early March of 2020. And that's just around the time that the country was shut down, NBA was shut down, everybody had to start quarantining throughout the world. And I started realizing how much money could be made investing in cards. So I kind of looked at what he was saying. I would look through eBay myself and see which players I'd be interested in buying into and investing in. And I was a huge Luka fan. I still am. So I would search up Luka cards every single day, look at how their prices have been changing, just, searching on recent eBay sales. And I just I fell in love with it. The cards today looked nicer than the cards looked like when I was growing up. They're a lot more chromy, especially if you look at something like Panini Prism or Panini Select. So those were the equivalent of Topps Chrome back in my day. Like, I could have gotten any Topps Chrome base card when I was a kid. It could have been of any player, and that would have been like the most awesome card in my collection, because Topps Chrome was that big of a deal for me back then. And it was that big of a deal for a lot of collectors. So this is basically Topps Chrome today, like today's version of Topps Chrome, Prism and Select. So I started, now I have a little bit more disposable income, not like, when I was a kid. So I started putting some money into, more expensive cards, more graded cards, so that, graded cards are awesome because the quality of the product that you're getting. And I just, throughout quarantine, I started buying up like crazy. And I'm not gonna get into specific numbers yet, but over the months and throughout quarantine, there were a lot of people that were putting in a lot of money throughout this hobby. Nate and I were talking pre-show. I wouldn't be surprised if there were billions of dollars being put into this hobby in 2020 alone. Billions of dollars being transacted purely off sports cards. So I did make a good profit buying and selling, dozens of cards, maybe over 100 cards, 200 cards. And it's been awesome getting back into it. I'll be honest, there are a lot of people in the industry who look at themselves as purely investors or collectors or flippers, but I look at myself as all three. So I do try to park some of my profits that I make on cards and buying into more higher end cards and holding on to those for a long time. So that's kind of just been my story of bouncing back into it. And I 2020 has been it's been a terrible year for so many people, but it's been honestly awesome for the card world, and I can't wait to see what 2021 brings and future
And
years moving
Jesse,
forward.
I mean, essentially laid out for you beautifully exactly why he is as good as he is at what he does. Numbers aside, there are so many different values of cards you can buy. You're going to hear us talk about $3, $5 cards. You're going to hear us talk about $80 cards. You're going to hear us talk about $500 cards. we're going to talk about cards that are well over 1,000 because those are cards that transactions have been made for regularly on eBay, and they're cards that we're going to advocate for. So depending on where you are in the world of purchasing, I think you're going to find a wide spectrum. And as we're going to talk about on shows, and as people that have already been listening to this podcast know, there are levels to the cards, different series, different whatever. And if you can't afford at the top price point, that doesn't really matter because the analysis still works. If we say, hey, this guy's got a great opportunity to explode, and you might not be able to afford his base prism or some variant of that. Well, we can go down to the Donruss, or we can go down to the hoops, whatever it is. There is a location for you, and you can still get in on the player and the spike that's going to come. And there's ways that works. And we're going to talk about that as well. But Jesse is great at this. Listen, Jesse just told you guys, all he has is free time. So please, planet_fatness, follow him, DM the shit out of this man. He'll answer as many questions as he can, I'm sure. Jesse, again, is incredibly knowledgeable, buying and selling actively. Jesse, you also preach to me all the time, and admittedly, I have not done it yet, to join Instagram, because that's one of the best social media platforms for people that are into the hobby. Where can people find you on there, on Instagram?
Sure. My Instagram name is almost equally as ridiculous as my Twitter name. It is at Flippity Flip Cards. Yeah, honestly, Instagram, it's an awesome platform to showcase what you have. It's very friendly for all three types of people in the hobby, whether you be investor, flipper, or collector. If you like, for me personally, honestly, I post a lot about cards that are in my personal collection and cards that I'm going to be hesitant to move for quite some time. Just to kind of, there's no harm in showing something off that you have in this hobby. That's why collectors are who they are. They're interested in seeing cards all the time, like very cool looking or valuable cards. So it's a great platform. I know people. I've done deals myself personally with other buyers and sellers on that platform with no questions asked. It's honestly, like, Twitter has a ways to go with the card world, but we definitely check out Instagram if you guys haven't already.
If this is your first sort of introduction to cards, just know that things can get incredibly expensive depending on where you want to go with it, but the ceiling is almost infinite in some cases. And just like Dynasty, which we're going to touch on a ton, the same analysis that you guys appreciate about what Matt and I do on the Sonic Truth, you're going to get a lot of parallels in card purchasing, and that's going to help you make a lot of money. I mean, more money than you probably would ever expect to make collecting cards. And I want to make sure that we make a couple things clear. Number one, this show is not strictly football, because if we were to pigeonhole ourselves into only NFL cards, we would be missing out on what is probably considered the biggest market for sports cards collecting in general, which is the NBA. I mean, it is the biggest mover of any of the sports out there. But we're going to talk about golf on this episode. For people that listened to our last podcast over on the Breakout Finder Network, we talked about NHL. We dropped an absolute bomb on you of a player that everybody should be chasing, and we may have accidentally artificially pumped the market. We did not mean to. Jesse claims to have seen sales of cards happening of Jaromir Jagr. I'll just say it again now. He's a guy that hasn't gone into the Hall of Fame yet. For those of you that were hockey fans in the 90s, he's still playing hockey in Czechoslovakia for a team that he actually owns. He's 1 year away from playing an age 50 season, which he said he would like to play, and that will be his 34th consecutive hockey season, but he is not in the NHL Hall of Fame yet, and that could cause a significant spike in his value in the future. That's why Jesse and we talked about in the podcast, we went in half on a really rare Jagr card, which we believe will spike in value at the point that this all takes place. But those are just the little things we do. And we want you to know that this is not strictly NFL, but that's the value in the card game. You need to diversify. You need to be ready at any moment to take advantage of these values. When I talk about the money that can be made in the card game, there's a lot of times, Jesse and I talk off air, we've talked about it on air just barely, But we talk about a lot of people are interested in playing DFS. A lot of people enjoy DFS because much like gambling itself in a casino, there's a risk reward factor to it. You can take your chances setting up your lineup, whatever format you're playing in. You can win big money. Do you always win big money? Usually not. It's pretty rare that guys are hitting big, amounts of money. I have friends on Twitter that have hit $50,000, $100,000, and they're blown away. But by the time they've done that, they've invested $25,000, $35,000, $40,000 en route to getting there. And we know that that's just how this works. But Jesse, when we talk about the parallel between card purchasing and the upside you can make in that in DFS, do you generally believe that cards are a safer way to go with a upside that could be comparable to what those win in DFS?
I definitely think so. So with cards, first of all, you're getting something physical. You're getting a physical object for, the money that you're investing into that card. So number one, I'm very big into like, actually, if I put money towards a card, I actually want that card to be in my hands. I don't want that. Usually don't want it to be in like a vault somewhere or some warehouse somewhere. Like I want the card in hand. So this way you're getting a physical object in hand that's worth something. It can, depending on what time of the season you're looking to buy or sell, or after a crazy performance where, I don't know, somebody like, let's say Trae Young puts up 72 points against the Clippers or something. So you're going to see a big price spike in his cards. You might have spent, $100, $200, $300 on one of his rookie PSA 10 cards. And that card, you better believe that card has the potential to double or triple overnight just because of that game alone. I mean, Trae Young's a good player, but you're going to have moments where you can definitely sell quickly if you want to take those profits and maybe invest that money elsewhere. So you're definitely getting something here. And with something like DFS, there's a lot more research that goes into DFS. It's DFS is honestly almost like a full-time job. I've been personally away from DFS for a couple of years. I was introduced to DFS back in 2015 or 2016 when DraftKings and FanDuel originally got hot. With varying degrees of success, and then I kind of personally I started going into the sports betting game and just taking really safe bets based off what betting models or sports betting models would say. So ever since, honestly, guys, like I was making a good amount of money sports betting, but I'm not betting on a single sports game anymore because of how much I'm making with cards right now. Because if you have the opportunity to buy low on somebody, like I'm sure we'll talk about some quarterbacks right now that aren't in the playoffs, and a lot of people aren't thinking about them. Now might not be the worst time to buy guys like those when so much of the focus of buyers and investors is in the NFL playoffs and players that are currently in the playoffs or the NBA. So there's buying opportunities all the time. And I mean, you have to, I recommend in order for you to get into this, you probably, it's better if you have some sort of background in cards or at least some sort of an appreciation for cards. So that way you kind of, you have respect towards the hobby as a whole. And you respect the cards, and you actually like the cards that you buy, and you give a damn about the cards that you buy. But long term, especially, with your potential losses in DFS, like you said, you can put in $20,000 in DFS, lose all of it, and then all of a sudden on a GPP you hit 25K, just like that. I mean, it's exciting, but you're really only netting $5,000. Whereas in sports cards, you could have put in 20K and walked out with 45K or 50K. Like it's happened. I've heard it. I've seen it plenty of times where stories like that don't surprise me anymore. So as an investment vehicle, I think you can be much more successful at investing in sports cards than something
And
like
I think
DFS.
that there are a ton of educated people in the card collecting world, But you're not going against, as we talked about off air, you're not going against giant fields of skilled players. When you locate a card, whether it's eBay or somewhere else, and you go, wow, this card is undervalued per my analysis, per what even Jesse and Nate have talked about on the show, I'm going to go after it. And it's just you and 4 or 5 other guys bidding on it. And these guys may just fall out of the bidding and you win this card for undervalue. Well, you don't run into that scenario in DFS. You're running against a field of highly skilled players, people running optimizers and tools, helping them maximize what they're doing. So it's even more difficult. And in Jesse's scenario, that guy that spent 20 grand, he may never even hit 25 grand. He might just go negative 25 grand. Like, it's so much safer because if you use your dynasty analysis and you think about like Drew Lock, most of us are not a fan of Drew Lock. So if you're buying a $8,000 Drew Lock card, well, that's a huge mistake, right? You shouldn't be doing that. But using your dynasty analysis and tools and abilities and looking at like dips in values of players, like we think maybe Russell Wilson might see a dip here in the upcoming future. We know he's great. That's the guy you invest in. And that's the difference. Jesse talked about Trae Young, but even in NBA, we could talk about Ja Morant. His first game of the season, he goes for 44 points. This is a guy that his card was $360, $370 before the season started. After the night when he went off for 44, his cards were selling for $1,000, $1,100, $1,200. If you had put $1,000 in Ja cards, you probably would have profited back, I don't know, $1,500, $1,600 in the course of a few months going by and then one night. Because we know that, and you'll hear about this more on the show, game to game, NBA cards can explode. I mean, they can literally just grenade hundreds of dollars, if not $1,000 at times, depending on the rarity and value of the cards. So if you have the money to invest, NBA is a great way to make money, and you don't even have to necessarily do the research. There are people out there doing it. Jesse and I are going to talk about options and things that we see, because I wasn't as heavy into NBA until Jesse got me back into cards. And then I realized, well, why would I ignore the greatest market for making income, which is NBA, and not taking anything away from DFS, because people do like optimizing and setting their lineup and looking at trends and using that to make money and compete. And that competition drives them. So if you enjoy that, then stick with it. But if you're looking to make money, I can almost guarantee you that though cards may not have the greatest hit ceiling of a big win in DFS, long term, they're safer. And we can almost guarantee that you're going to make as much money if you're willing to invest it. That's almost a guarantee. And the way that we're going to back that up is by bringing guests on this show that have done that themselves. Next week, we're bringing on a guy who's got a great personal collection, somebody that's spent a decent amount of money on cards. You guys will hear him on the next episode. Our plan is to bring on, if we can get a hold of them, and I think we will, CEOs of grading companies, CEOs of online card companies where like Star Stock or these other ones where you can holster digital purchases of cards. Tons of stuff out there. If I can get my hands on a celebrity, which we very well may be able to with the size audience that we have, that's got a personal collection, I'd love to bring them on too, because we talked about on our last podcast, Matthew McConaughey, right? Is that who it is? Who are we talking about? Who's the last episode? That's what it was, Wahlberg. Same fucking guy, right? Same guy. It was Wahlberg. And his kids are crazy into the collecting thing, and he's really pushing it, and he's a big fan. So there's just such a broad group of people that are doing this that I think that the hobby is going to continue to grow. And in your estimation, Jesse, is the hobby going anywhere at all?
I think it's here to stay. I don't have a crystal ball exactly. I don't know how long it's going to last for, but I think I'll put it this way. I think the prices that we saw back when cards were less popular back between 2011 to 2018 or so, I don't think we're going to see the prices that low anytime soon. We're already kind of seeing, not kind of, we're already seeing a boom, but I think this boom is going to last for some time. I don't know if it's going to be 10 years, but it's not going to end tomorrow. There's too much money invested by people who have a lot of money, people who are in charge of it, like investing funds, and multimillionaires have a lot of money tied into this. And, common people who are just interested in investing, whether short term or long term, they have a lot of money invested in this too. So right now we're looking at this as being like a potential $2 to $3 billion industry right now. So I don't think we're going to see the end of this boom come anytime soon. Like going into some of the reason as to why we're even seeing this boom in the first place. We might have mentioned this on a previous episode, but people that are between like your age, like around our age, they have families themselves, they have kids themselves, their kids are starting to get into cards, and all of a sudden these parents, usually dads, they're seeing how much cooler these cards look compared to what the designs were back when they were collecting, when they were like 8, 10, 12 years old. And obviously they have more disposable income now, and if they kind of have that collector gene in them, there's a pretty good chance they're going to be interested in collecting at some point in their lives. So you have people like that. You have other people who were also collecting when they were younger, who just look at this as their art. So high-end art collectors, they go to very high-end auctions and and bid millions of dollars on paintings that a lot of people couldn't give a shit about. But you have these similar people, except they look at their art or their cards as art. So a lot of people see that as investment vehicles. You even see celebrities. We keep talking it's almost at this point in every episode we've done, we have some sort of a topic that has to do with a celebrity or an athlete showing off their collection or showing off something on social media about sports cards in general. Like you said, last episode, we were talking about Mark Wahlberg and how him and his 10 or 12-year-old sons are starting their own sports card company startup. And I think they're focused mostly on like breaking or just ripping open boxes and having people follow them along in their journey. And we have even people like even athletes like LeBron James, who has in his possession the most expensive LeBron James rookie card in existence. He has multiple copies of those in his collection as I think what's mostly an investment piece. That card is worth at least millions of dollars. That same card just sold in August for I think $1.8 million, if I'm not mistaken. So, and then you have Giannis posting on Instagram and showing off his own personal collection. He collects a lot of himself. He collects other players, and we even see a goat like Patrick Mahomes talking about how he'll just pull up. He'll bring up on his Instagram story like random teammates whose rookie cards of theirs he has, and they're not even all that valuable. But you can tell he collects cards, and we're going to see more and more people kind of coming out of the shadows and bringing their collections forth, especially if they're really like all-time great athletes or celebrities. We'll see rappers, like musicians, actors. We're gonna see a lot more people coming out of the woodwork and showing off their collections and how long they've been collecting.
There are tiers to this as well, and we talk about this with NBA, with like sort of Giannis is young, but we look at like Luka Doncic and we say that he's kind of the top of the tier of these young modern players, and he sort of is the highest price guy. That's $1,600, $1,700, $1,800 rookie card. And then that next kind of group of guys below him are right at $1,000, $800, $900, $1,100. Patrick Mahomes is the king of the modern day young guys at the quarterback position, right? But now we've got Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen is clearly a riser here this season, certainly. I mean, he's probably grown maybe the most if we look at like his low point to today. I would have to look back on that, but I'm sure he's gone up a lot. But these guys are going to kind of follow the trend of Patrick Mahomes in a sense. If Lamar Jackson continues to play competitive, high level football and Ravens keep on winning, I mean, look at Russell Wilson's prices. He's been to back-to-back Super Bowls multiple years ago. He's been a good quarterback in the league, but he hasn't necessarily competed in a Super Bowl in quite a few years, but his value has sustained. But he's in that different group. He's sort of that next group above in terms of like established veteran. We now know this guy is Hall of Fame caliber. We now know this guy is early 30s, productive. We know what he is. These young guys with sort of this flair and ability can continue to kind of ascend at this, this feverish pace. So Lamar Jackson, like you said, a great name for anybody that's got some money to invest into it. And I'll just say now, Jesse and I have made a couple purchases online. We bought a set of Kobe Bryant rookie cards at one point. Jesse negotiated a price. The guy had two. We got a little bit of a discount. We each bought a card. That was one way to get our hands on cards. Another way is like I talked about, we bought this Yager card. We literally bought one card and went half on it. And so now we're sitting in a position where when that takes place, we'll list the card, split the profits. And it's a unique way to do it. So for those of you that are wincing at the idea of spending $600 on a card, well, if you'd be willing to spend $3 and you have somebody you trust that's willing to spend $3 and you want to invest in a card that has upside, then that's exactly another way to do it. And there are companies out there that you can invest in shares of cards. Well, I'm sure we'll get back to that one day. We did talk about it on the last episode. If you guys want to listen to that on the Breakout Finder account. But quarterback is absolutely king in card collecting. So when we're looking at the quarterback position, Jesse, off the top of your head, and we've talked about this on other episodes, who are some other quarterbacks that might be intriguing purchases for people that want to get their hands on that Lamar Jackson jump?
I mean, it's definitely. I've had people ask me this and hit me up over the course of this past week about this exact topic, and there are certain guys that I'm a fan of, but it's more fun if you invest your money into something or into somebody who you believe in. So I'll just give you, like, right off the top of my head, some guys I'm a really big fan of, and who I'll be looking to purchase in the offseason personally are Kyler Murray. I think because he's not in the playoffs right now. The Cardinals didn't make it into the playoffs, so people are kind of sleeping on him. I mean, his prices are slightly, spiking for a little for some reason right now. I'm not really sure why, but as soon as his prices dip, I'm going to be looking in his general direction. I'm a huge Kyler believer. I think he has an MVP incoming at some point over the course of his career. And yeah, I'm a huge believer in him. I love his scrambling ability and like his. I think Evan Silva coined it as like Iversonian level scrambling skills and juking skills. So I'm a big fan of him. I also love somebody like Deshaun Watson. I've been trying to buy his cards up like crazy, but unfortunately with the trade rumors right now, I think there a lot of collectors are remembering that Deshaun Watson exists. So we're kind of seeing his prices spike temporarily now, but eventually they'll dip back down to a more palatable range. But I'm very high on Deshaun Watson for whatever team he's at in 2021. I think he's a dark horse candidate to win MVP. That's just my personal take, but I'm a huge Watson fan. And maybe some other under the radar. And you also mentioned, sorry, Russell Wilson. I'm really going to be looking into buying some of his 2012 Prism base cards and 2012 Topps Chrome base cards when their prices start dropping slightly after people start forgetting about the Seahawks. And some lesser guys. So we've kind of, Nate, you hinted on this in the last show, but somebody like Carson Wentz, we believe that there is some sort of there is talent there. Me personally, being an Eagles fan, I'm not the biggest Wentz fan, but I'm not exactly a Wentz hater, and I do believe that our team single-handedly probably broke him. But that doesn't mean that I don't think he can't succeed elsewhere. So I've already said this before. I'm convinced. Somebody like Bill Belichick in the 2020 offseason, going into the 2020 season, he already spoke out to the media and said he's a Carson Wentz fan. So I'm going to believe that the Patriots are probably at least going to be interested in listening to Carson Wentz offers from the Eagles. I think the Colts are a very reasonable landing spot for Wentz because of his history with Frank Reich in Philadelphia. And, kind of Reich can definitely help revitalize his career, hopefully, in somewhere like Indianapolis. There are cards like that. There's guys that you can certainly buy on the low now. Somebody like Sam Darnold, who probably also needs a change of scenery out of New York and who can definitely get a starting job elsewhere starting next season, hopefully. So yeah, those are just some examples of who I believe in and who I believe their prices can spike going into next season, or if they can just have some sort of general success in their new destination, or some guys that just got knocked out of the playoffs, somebody like Russell Wilson, or somebody who missed the playoffs like Kyler Murray. I think any of those guys are
It's
fantastic buys.
shocking. I mean, when you think about the prices of these cars, even looking at Watson, I mean, Watson in November was down around $350 for his PSA 10. And correct me if I'm wrong, and this is going to cause so much confusion, so much confusion. But 2017, the base was a silver. Is that right? Okay.
Yes. 2016 and 2017, for whatever reason, Panini, when they created their NFL Prism sets, they didn't make a base prism. So a base prism just basically looks like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Topps Chrome back in the day. It has that chromium look, but it doesn't quite refract light so much. So for whatever reason, they only created the prism silver that year, and the silver is equivalent to like a Topps Chrome refractor. It's called a refractor for a reason, because it refracts light when you shine light on it, and you can see all the different colors in the refractions. So for whatever reason, Panini only created Prism Silver in 2016 and 2017. I mean, they have different colored prisms. They have like red prism, green prism, red, white, and blue prism. But the silver prism for those years, unfortunately, it's kind of looked at as, the equivalent of like a prism base for that year. But I mean, it's still a silver. It's still a refractor card in my opinion. So I think it should still be valued as such, and for the most part, it is.
It's gonna screw with your head if you guys have never got into the card game. Again, I'm just gonna tell you there's so much of this. It took me a long time to make sense of the hierarchy of the acronyms, the variants, the inserts. There's so much to it. But just know that when you see a card that says silver, you're going to be shocked, because you're going to go, why is Deshaun Watson silver so much cheaper than Josh Allen's or whatever? Like, it's just because it became the base card that year. So nonetheless, it's going to screw with you. But that's a great call, because it was a card that was $350 at one point. Got up to, over $700 here not too long ago, but that's because people should stay on Deshaun Watson. I think it's a great call no matter where he goes, especially if he goes to a more competitive football team. He has a chance to win MVP, because unfortunately for Houston, they're never going to have a good draft pick as long as they have Deshaun Watson. They're going to be competitive. They're going to win enough football games to draft in a not so advantageous location, and it's just going to be a perpetual burn, picking at number 9, picking at number 10, picking number, so him leaving Houston feels more likely than not, but yet to be determined on whether that's the case or not. Jesse, we talked about Luka Doncic earlier in this episode, and there's a clip out there. I wish I could pull it up, but Luka found out that there are cards of him, rookie cards, that are selling for $50,000 or more, and he's saying he wants to own some of them himself.
Yeah, he basically, I think he was just in the middle of like a normal either post or pregame presser, or post-practice presser, and I don't know who it was, but there was one reporter. I guess they must have some background in cards or some interest in cards. He's saying that, you have cards with a piece of your jersey and your autograph on them, and they're in really good condition, and they're going for a lot of money. Some are going for 50,000, some are going for six figures. What he basically said, like what's your opinion on this, or like have people approached you about this? And he's like, no, I mean, not really, but he's like, yeah, these card things, I'm not really too good with them, but if you're telling me that a card like that is worth $50,000, I need to get some of them. I want some of them. So I already mentioned this with Giannis. You're already seeing some players that are, confident enough to invest in themselves, and obviously LeBron has probably held on to that rookie card that I'm talking about, his most valuable rookie card, for probably he must have at least had a copy. Like Upper Deck probably just gave him that copy of, whenever he signed that card, and whenever they put his event worn jersey on that card. Yeah, I mean, players are. It's honestly for them, it's kind of a confidence builder too, because they're literally putting their money where their mouth is, and showing everybody that that they believe in themselves long term, and their longevity in the league, and how great they can be in the league. You even see this to an extent of like lesser players. Like I know Donovan Mitchell. I think not long after the draft, he even posted a photo at one point of a bunch of his rookie cards that he bought himself. That just kind of just kind of giving flexing on the rest of the NBA community that this is a guy who believes in himself. So yeah, it's honestly it's really cool to see these guys that are willing to put their money towards a piece of, I guess, themselves, and honestly it's something that's definitely going to appreciate over time.
And I think that's something that we talked about again off air, is with the tragic passing of Kobe Bryant last year. It kind of shook everything up, and we've seen the prices of his cards go up from that point. Obviously, became a rarity, and in the future, there's going to be documentaries. Like you said, I didn't even know there was a Kobe Day. I mean, is that what it is? I mean, I'm so out of the loop.
It's Mamba Day, August 24th.
There you go. So with the constant hype that's there, and we know that Kobe's cards, like Shaq's cards, like Jordan's cards, like they are going to continue to ascend in value and become more rare, more valuable. And you can get in on these cards if you want to position yourself now and wait for some of these jumps, just like this Tiger Woods situation. It's sort of in the blink of an eye, cards can make a sudden change. And you just have to know when you're buying cards that you're not overpaying, because you're cutting into your profits. It's more difficult, whether you're factoring in grading, whether you're factoring in, if you're buying on eBay, paying taxes. There's other websites that we'll talk about again in the future that take less away from a seller. There's less to deal with in terms of how much something costs. So with all that factored in, you have to make sure that you're not overpaying for a card. All off season on the NBA, I kept hitting Jesse up. I was looking at cards, wanting to purchase, and we were basically like, look, this is the amount you should spend. If it exceeds this amount, walk away from the auction, because you don't want to find yourself, I have to win this card. You spend $80, $90, $100 over what the card's worth, and then the day that card does jump up $200, your profits are less, or maybe it doesn't go up that much. I mean, there's just ways to look at it. So if you want to posture yourself for these big explosions in value, being aware culturally of, or even in this case in Tiger Woods with his documentary, knowing things that are coming up on the timeline can be very valuable assets in the future. So we covered a lot of ground, Jesse, like a lot of ground. I didn't even think we were going to get to this much, which I'm not sure that you did either, but we've nailed lots of it. Guys, listen, Matt Kelly, again, big fan of what was going on, wanted us to bring the show to you guys over here at the Rotounderworld Network. I hope you enjoy what we're putting together. If you have questions, hit us up on Twitter. When we advertise these posts on Twitter, feel free to drop questions in there as well. We'll try to integrate them into the show as it grows. We'll get to what we can. If you guys are looking for more card content weekly, I'm writing an eBay auction hunter article on Patreon, patreon.com/I'm Outrage, where I'm trying to find some unique cards that are underpriced that can shoot up in value. If you guys are looking to work your way into auctions, there's a big community on Discord. These guys are always talking about cards, so you can join what's going on over there as well with access to Patreon. And if you want this full video, because it will drop in tandem with the audio, go to youtube.com/Nate Liss. I got to change that / one of these days. And you guys can see this video. I have all the other videos that I've been talking about there as well. So if you want to find old episodes, go to the Breakout Finder Network. If you want the videos, go to the YouTube. Make sure to follow Jesse on Instagram, on Twitter. We're trying to get this guy well over 1,000 followers, because there's no doubt about it, he is one of the absolute best when it comes to cards. So if you guys are looking for a leg up, follow him. I see he's become more active as he's had more followers, which I appreciate, because when Jesse posts stuff, everybody should be paying attention to it. So next week, Jesse, who's our guest that's coming on this show for the people that clearly are unaware of the fact that we're bringing on a guest at all?
Yeah, he's a big time collector, primarily modern football collector. His on Instagram, his handle is at that's the old price. His name is Robert. I can't. His last name is escaping me. But he's a very high end Patrick Mahomes collector. He has a very crazy history in collecting, when like just like we did as kids. But then when he got back into it, he really got back into it. Like, my collection looks like dust compared to what he's looking at, and the gold pile of Mahomes that he's sitting on. I'm really looking forward to this interview. I've heard this guy speak before, and I can't believe we were able to get him onto our show.
That's what we plan to do. Give you guys more insight from people that are very, very good at doing this. Kind of give you their point of view, how they've made themselves successful, how they've made the jumps from probably buying cards that were less expensive to, putting those profits back in and investing in cards that are much more expensive. And I think it's a path that just about anybody can go down as long as they stay active and they're timely and they're up on current events. There's no way to fail. So again, hit Jesse up if you've got questions. We will be back next week on Clear the Cash.